Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at theDove.us. Welcome back. Always a delight to have in the studio with us Paul Coughlin. He is the president and the founder of The Protectors, and he's actually one of my surrogate sons. I can slap him around, tell him what to do, and put him on probation and get away with it.
That's true. And you've grounded me.
I've grounded you.
Last week I was grounded, so I couldn't play outside.
No. Anyway, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
I'm good.
The Protectors, for those who don't know, tell us what you do.
Anti-bullying organization, started out faith-based only. Within 3 months, we had more requests to speak in public schools than private schools. So we're unique in the United States, and where we work in private Christian schools. I was just down in Panoma working with St. Damien. Was in Little Rock working with Little Rock Christian Academy last week, and we just diminish bullying wherever it takes place. Public school, private school, Sunday school, you'd be blown away how much bullying takes place in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, wherever. You know,
the subject is big, and you have brought great attention to it. Even some national advertisers are getting into it. I don't know if you saw the one Nissan ad during the Super Bowl had a reference to bullying.
Sure did.
And the father came and protected the child and got him out of the situation. Of course, you never know you're watching a Nissan commercial. It was a spot about fathering and anti-bullying, and then it was ended up being a Nissan commercial.
Yeah, you know, Perry, it's a no-brainer. I am surprised that more companies don't jump on board. I mean, it's a win-win. No one wants bullying. To be one of those organizations, and particularly a corporate sponsor, most schools don't have a budget to really effectively deal with bullying. And so they need organizations to come in and help them. Well, that's what happened in Little Rock. It was an attorney, 3 attorneys came together and sponsored our work in that area, and they actually want us to return to work with the private schools, or public schools now. Wow. So it's a no-brainer for corporations to get on board and diminish what is now the #1 form of child abuse in the nation. #1 form. In some ways, it's accelerated. Oh, it has to have. Yeah, you know, in our movement, there is this statistic that 160,000 kids stay home from school each day. That's roughly around 12 million a year. And that statistic was taken in the early 1990s before cyberbullying. I don't know if that number is twice that number, but it is certainly larger than that. It's hard to say for sure how many kids are being bullied and the increase, but it's probably safe to say that with cyberbullying, it is increasing.
All right. Even though it may be increasing, the awareness of it is also increased. And more people are stepping up and stepping out.
You know what? We're seeing that in our work, and of course that's what we do. We go into organizations, and our main thing is to get that bystander who's often conflicted. They want to help that target, but they're scared to death to help that target. So we help bystanders do the right thing afraid. We help them become what we call alongside standers. And the reason for that is that most studies show that they have the most potential power to change bullying, but only about 13% will actually help the target. 40 to 60% will actually help the bully in one way or another, and that's because cruelty is currency in youth culture. Cruelty is currency in Christian youth culture. It's probably not as much. So you're going to have it in Christian schools as well. But we certainly, what we want to do is make moral courage or civic courage currency. And so we get to see this. We get to see these bystanders become alongside standers. And so at least in the areas that we work, we get to see an increase.
Where is it most prominent? Is it middle school? Is it corporate America? Is it high school, college? Where is it? I mean, I know it's at all those levels, but do you see one area greater than another?
Yeah, well, statistically, they'll tell you that it spikes in grades 4 through 9. And so that is ground zero of bullying. So the end of elementary school and pretty much all of middle school, that's Lord of the Flies, boy, what these kids do to one another. Wow. And why is it? Is because to be unkind, to be mean, and even cruel to another kid is currency. Studies show, they've asked middle schoolers, UCLA did this in February of 2013. They asked middle schoolers who are the most popular, and then they said, who are the bullies? and they almost completely align. They're almost identical lists.
Really?
So to be awful to another kid, not only do you rise in social status, you can maintain social status. So how do you fix that? We adults have to change that currency. We adults are the ones who have to say to our kids, that is wrong. When we see it on television, when we hear our kids be demeaning in language and behavior toward other kids, we have to call them on the carpet and say, everyone is made in the image of God. All of us have dignity, value, and worth. No one has the right to take that away from another person.
Wow. You used the word currency.
I know.
Explain that.
Well, it is. I mean, it's like money. It really is like money. Is that if I want to be popular in a room, and particularly if I want to dominate that class, I will go after a kid who a bully's not looking for a fight. They're looking to overwhelm. And so I'll look for a kid who I'm pretty sure won't push back, and I will. They call it scoring points. I'll go after that person, usually with words, and I'll demean them and say horrible things to them. And the other kids in the class will find that amusing. They'll find it funny. They'll admire me because we're mistaking the difference between power and strength. I'm using raw power to dominate and control another person, but that's not strength. Strength is when people take innate abilities and they use it for good. We're not making that distinction, unfortunately, as a nation. And it's going to be adults who have to change it. We can't, kids need to be saved from themselves, Perry. We adults have to change this dynamic.
All right, the subtlety of bullying, it's in all the sitcoms.
Yeah.
It's some kind of a put down, it's some kind of a demeaning thing, and they showcase it in humor, and somehow we've accepted that.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, and we're getting into a little murky area now. It's the difference between teasing and taunting, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
you have 2 boys, I have 2 boys, and I've got a daughter and a wife. And I've had to explain to Sandy and Abigail that boys tease the ones they love, right? And so teasing is good-natured. Both people are laughing. It's about something that the person can change. Taunting is not good-natured. It's designed to harm the other person. The other person isn't laughing. So certainly one of the best ways to attack another person is through veiled domination and control, through sarcasm, which has its place in this world. We just have to be careful how we use it.
All right, so when you go into a school and you meet with the administration first, or you meet with the students, how do you do this?
Yeah, usually we meet with 3 groups. We meet with students. Most people think that that's the most important gathering, and it's an important gathering, but it isn't the most important one. We meet with faculty, usually do faculty training, overcome a lot of myths, help teachers better identify bullies, and then how to better handle them. How to help targets is a big one as well. And then the third group is parents. They actually have the most power. Parents need to change how they parent, not just targets. Usually many targets will be non-assertive, and that can come from over-parenting, but usually on behalf of the mom. The parenting of the bully tends to be coercive, so the bully is just doing what they saw at home. Well, how do you get your will? You just are coercive toward other people. Also, bullies tend to be very arrogant, and their parents tend to be arrogant as well. But then what we really need to change is the parent of the bystander. We need to expect our child to do something life-affirming when they see bullying take place. And that is really what's going to change bullying, because, Perry, it's not a school problem. It is a cultural problem. We need to change the culture.
Do most parents recognize it?
No. No, I mean, I would say most parents in regard to the target, most parents in regard to the bully and to the bystander, it's usually not on their radar unless their child becomes a target. Then it becomes very important.
Because most kids won't go home and say I'm being bullied. They'll go home and lock themselves in the room.
Yeah, and they'll believe in a kind of superstition, Perry, and you can see why, but they just want to click their heels 3 times like Dorothy and just make it all go away.
Yeah.
I mean, Perry, we've had people who work for the protectors who find out on their last day of school for their child that their child was bullied the entire school year.
Whoa.
Because only about 10% of abuse victims ever talk, and whether that's abuse through bullying, sexual abuse, you name the abuse. roughly only about 10% ever talk about their experience. Most live in a kind of quiet desperation.
They internalize it. I do know that. I mean, we have other ministries around the valley here. I'm thinking of the Loft and others where they're dealing with young girls and guys. But when a kid is bullied, they just slowly begin to shut down, and you don't see those signs. They become recluse.
Yeah, they do. That little light, that little spirit that they have, you know, they were once so happy to go to school, right? And they just don't have that desire anymore. In fact, they're coming up with these telltale signs will be these mystery illnesses. These kids are feeling horrible inside. Their stomachs really are killing them. Some are throwing up before school begins on the front lawn. That's how sometimes board members will find out about it. Why is that kid throwing up in the front of the school? He's probably being bullied. Just signs of depression, either sleeping too much, sleeping too little, eating too much, eating too little, outbursts of anger from a kid who just wasn't that way before. These kids are bullying of siblings that they didn't, you know, do that before.
Jumping ahead, and I'll come back. Is it true that there is a link on some of these school shootings and those who perpetrate that they were bullied?
The Secret Service interviewed 37 school shooters, asked them why they did it. 85% of them, almost all of them, said they did it because as revenge against bullying. The Secret Service said that it met the legal definition of harassment and the moral definition of torment. Perry, these kids are being tormented. They're being tormented for other people's pleasure and entertainment and status. And I just gave you part of the definition of sadism. Bullying, hardcore bullying, serial bullying is sadistic. These kids go on to commit crime later in life statistically.
Well, we're seeing it on an international scale.
We sure are.
With terrorism.
And we're seeing a pretty anemic response to some of it as well.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Perry, bullies do not, serial bullies do not listen much to peace, love, and understanding. We wish they would, but they don't. To be gracious to a serial bully, we need to extend grace to people. I mean, we're a Christian radio television station, I know. And we do need to extend grace. We need to extend love, but it's not going to look like love to a serial bully. They listen to power and consequences. What's in it for me to change? So you have to speak to a bit more of a selfish nature, because by and large, your average bully is very arrogant. It's really hubris in a young body. So you kind of have to, dealing with a very arrogant person is going to be very different than dealing with a very humble person.
Does the bullier know psychologically what they're doing, or they are just operating off the euphoric feeling that they get by being superior?
Oh, that's very insightful. It depends on the bully. A acute bully. A lot of people, if you look back on your time in school, I know I bullied. I did it with words. Imagine that, with sarcasm, and I learned it.
I know, I grounded you for doing that.
You've been grounding me for decades, Perry. I did it. I was really good with sarcasm. I learned it from a family member, and I did it in high school. And so, if people are honest, we've all experimented. We put the ring on in Lord of the Rings. You know, the ring represents dark power. We've all put that ring on every once in a while. Most of us take it off. Serial bullies, they're like the dog that got the chicken. Once they got a taste of that, the thrill and all that, the pleasure, they can't stop. They just keep going. So I think that most of them know they're being pretty awful to another person, but there is fun in sin for a season. There's pleasure in sin for a season. Right. It's pleasurable. Yeah. Do most of them know the outcome of the misery they're doing to the other person? I don't think they do. Okay. A minority does, and they don't care. The majority would care more if they knew more, but you have to be careful with that.
All right. I think this is also something I want to get into after the break. Christians that are involved in this may not know it, or they just feel the need to be superior. I'm seeing it in corporate America. I'm seeing bosses manage this way. And we're watching people just go, and go out the back door. Yeah. And I'm sure you've spoken to that. The other thing I want to ask you when we get back, if somebody is caught in hardcore bullying, which would be, I guess, in the category of sadistic and maybe even abuse, what should be the consequences? Do we just spank them and say, don't do that? Or do we do something to these people to stop it? We'll be right back with Paul Coughlin and the Protectors in just a moment. All right, we're back with Paul Coughlin, and he is the president and the founder of the Protectors, and it's a group that goes into secular schools, or public schools I should say, as well as faith-based schools, and deals with the subject of protectors. He also deals with it in the culture and corporate America. A lot of questions here, Paul. But in the glorification of violence, does that play into the picture at all?
It sure does. I mean, we really are a culture that glorifies violence. There's no doubt about it. We've been doing it for a long time.
We're not outraged by violence anymore.
No, we're not. We're more outraged by a sex scene, particularly within the church, right? A sex scene, oh my goodness. Well, but the killing of 300 people, well, you know,
yeah.
I don't know. I guess it's predestined.
Yeah.
I've never quite understood that. I don't think I'll ever understand that, and I don't want to understand it.
Yeah.
But we do. I think, for example, Gordon Ramsay of Hell's Kitchen,
yeah.
He gets paid $225,000 an episode, in part by searing the psychological flesh from another person. According to Forbes, he's worth an estimated $50 million. And he has done this. You could go to YouTube, and you can just type in his name. You'll see some of the most disgusting clips from this person. And he's wealthy beyond description. Adults are making him wealthy through his horrible behavior, and we think it's funny.
All right. What should we do when a bullier is caught red-handed? In other words, it's gone on too far, you caught them, they don't care. How in the world do you treat that, and what would be the consequences?
It's a great question, because the three vocations where bullying could be the worst, the effects are going to be nursing, education, and ministry.
Say that again.
Nursing, education, and ministry.
Really?
Because all three attract a nurturing personality, right? And the nurturing personality believes that the bully has low self-esteem, and that if we can just help them build up their inner butterfly, that they'll fly to new heights, right? This is what we've been told. It is pseudo-psychology. In reality, most bullies have average to excessive self-esteem. Your average bully, on average, is arrogant. They're full of themselves. They believe other people are below them. Well, how do you reach such a person? Hard, consistent consequences. And sequestering them, getting rid of them. Most bullies are not interested. Most serial bullies are not interested in change. Most serial bullies want other people to change. Most serial bullies do not believe they need to change. And so they're very difficult people to reach. The ultimate answer is humility. Hard thing to bring to an arrogant person. Usually, as the scriptures say, they're around for a while, and then the next day they're gone. They're like the grass that withers and blows away. They often need to run their own course. Usually money, if you could take money away from them, that would mean a lot. That gets their attention.
So they feel no shame about damaging a person?
Well, what they've probably done, Perry, if they're a serial bully, as opposed to an acute bully. And if we're talking about adults now,
right.
In Romans, Paul writes about people who have seared their own consciousness.
Right.
And so they're in that category. Now they're never going to come out and say, I'm a serial. They're not going to tattoo on their forehead, I'm superior to you.
Yeah.
But their behavior does. How they look at people with their eyes, their body language, the words they use and don't use, these have all been studied.
Wow.
And they pretty much think they're the sharpest tool in the shed. Therefore, other people deserve their horrible treatment. They are above the herd. Other people are below them. Therefore, whatever they say goes, because they are so important. This is how they view themselves.
All right. Back to, is it the 4th grade through the 9th grade?
Yeah. Ground zero.
Well, all right, ground zero. And that's when you are trying to figure out who you are as a person. You're probably going through puberty.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of peer pressure.
Trying on personalities.
Yeah, all that is racing on at the same time. And you're being bullied. The first thing you do is internalize it. You shut down.
You do. You believe usually there's lies associated with this. They'll say, you're stupid, even when you're not.
Yeah.
They'll say no one likes you, even though that's not true. There's plenty of people who like them.
Yeah.
But Perry, they just repeat these lies over and over and over. And eventually, even the strongest among us, over time, usually succumb to it. And then there's one thing that gets even worse. It's called the bullying mentality. Kids who would normally never bully begin to bully if it continues on for a long period of time.
Is that the defense mechanism or what?
In part, they're pretty happy. Well, they're not happy. They feel very fortunate that someone else is being bullied and it's not them.
Oh.
At least all that negative stuff is going towards someone else, so it won't come toward me, which isn't true.
They just add to it then.
Yeah, there's a short story called The Painted Bird in Poland during just before World War II, and they would take a bird, a crow, paint on its wings and let it go, and others would peck at it because it was different. So if that other person is the painted bird, well, so be it, because that's not going to happen to me.
So it becomes a defense mechanism. What do you say to parents who may suspect their kids are being bullied?
Yes, what you need to do is document to the best of your ability. And I need to make sure that it's bullying, that it's not conflict. Bullying is the superior use of power with the intention to harm another person over time and for no good reason. It is victimization without provocation. A kid will tell you they're being bullied, but when you look into it further, he's been yapping as well. I mean, it's two people roughly of equal strength going at each other, usually verbal, not physical. So you need to find out whether it's bullying to begin with. Once you know it's bullying, you need to tell your child, and I've done this with all three of my kids, I just need to know. It doesn't mean I'm going to do anything about it, because maybe the best answer is nothing. And sometimes it's true. Mm-hmm. Maybe that kid just had a bad day. You don't know. Yeah. But you know what? I just need to know. I need to know if there's a pattern of behavior. And then say to your child, once we establish this pattern of behavior, we can decide together when we will go to the school and tell the school. Why do you do this? Is because they don't want to talk. So you have to make it easy for them to talk. They just don't want to. They're so full of self-recrimination, Perry. It's very awful.
Is this a international problem? In other words, is it regulated to third worlds? Does it get into, besides first worlds? I mean, well, I see you've taken it to Africa.
Yeah, we were in Tanzania, and representatives from Uganda came to that trip. It is everywhere. It is ubiquitous. Wherever 10 or more kids gather, statistically, there could be bullying. It's amazing over there, for example, of albino children who are born albino will have their hands cut off, even their legs or their feet cut off because they're different. And it also includes some degree of superstition and witchcraft, some issues there. But it is certainly everywhere humans gather, there'll be bullying, because, Perry, there's something extremely pleasurable about dominating and controlling another person. And some people, to them, it's electrifying. They just love it.
So it's the unregenerated spirit. I mean, the real cure to this is, you know, conversion to Christ. I mean, taking on the Christ-like nature instead of the man nature.
Let me give you an example.
I mean, Paul dealt with it in Romans 7, you know.
He sure did. There's a young lady named Alex Moore in Jameson, Alabama. On May 12, 2010, jumped from an overpass over I-65. She jumped around 7 a.m. She was called names I can't repeat on television. She was overweight, so you can only imagine what they said to her. Yeah. 2 weeks before she committed suicide, or some people call bullycide, a young man named Brandon came up to her and said, "I'm in gym class, and I'm sorry for what I said to you, what I've been saying to you. I've become a Christian, and I now know that what I've been doing is wrong, and I hope that you can forgive me." Wow. 2 weeks later, she took her life. Brandon cleared his conscience that day. Cleared his conscience. So I've looked into this story, Perry. Wow. I can't find anyone else in that community. Wow. No one else in that community who's gone up and apologized to her for their horrible behavior. So for all the bad rap that religion gets, and it deserves part of a bad rap, it does. You know what? It's still making people do things. It's leading people to do things they normally never would do unless they knew God was watching and He cared.
All right, so bully's been around since the beginning of time.
Cain and Abel, probably?
Yeah. Yeah, well, there you go. But it's now front and center in so many ways. I'm hearing radio commercials. Today in gym, I learned that I was stupid. In science, I learned that I was fat. You know, in history, I learned that I was a nobody. Have you heard those spots?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
I mean, they're very powerful spots. They're public service announcement spots dealing with the subject of bullying. This is what I learned in school today.
Yeah.
And your heart just stops and thinking, my stars, what are we doing? What's happening? One
of the best ways for parents to try to ensure their child will not be bullied or not be a serial target, because most of us will get bullied from one time or another, is friendships. Friendships are the front line of defense. I've often likened it, and my wife came up with a program called Balcony Girls. It was designed in part to help girls forge friendships in the schools that they're going to be going off to in middle school as well as high school. And I kind of look at it as a special ops group of kids, right, where you just need like 3 to 5 people around you, and you have each other's back, where you're able to buffer that horrible behavior on behalf of other people. And then when your child is told these lies, that they get that bolstering from their friends right away. It's like an antidote to an illness. Friendships.
Well, I want to say to our viewers and listeners, Paul can come to your church or to your organization, speak at your service club. Go to theprotectors.org, probably the best way to connect and see all of the curriculum that's there and available. But you're all over the country. I don't know, are you cloning yourself these days? What are you doing?
We do have a DVD program, which is me talking from a state. I think it was in Nashville. And so, yeah, we have that.
Okay. Anyway, theprotectors.org is the best way to get a hold of them. But big topic. And Paul, I'm just amazed how God's using you and what's going on here. But your efforts are getting through, and the antidote to all of this is taking place out there.
Well, thank you. You played a big role, Perry, so thank you.
I'll keep you grounded the rest of your life. Good to see you, friend.
Nice to see you.
All right, we'll be right back.